In a new filing by Donald Trump at the Supreme Court, Judge Murphy up in Massachusetts is openly defying the Supreme Court's ruling from Friday, which blocked his injunction. It allows the Trump administration, in their view, to continue to deport people to third world countries and third countries like South Sudan and Libya without due process. That's what the order says. Except if you look closer at the order and you look closer at Judge Sotomayor's dissent, she outfoxed the Trump administration because she said, well, the injunction I understand is being blocked, and I think that's wrong by the majority of the Supreme Court. Of course, the remedial orders of Judge Murphy have not been addressed by the Supreme Court. Right. They didn't divest Judge Murphy of all of his jurisdiction. And he issued another order a month after the injunction that was the subject of the appeal. And in that order, he just declared he still has authority, power, and jurisdiction to require the Trump administration to keep people in the United States, not deport them to third world countries until he's had an opportunity to look at the due process issues and have an opportunity to determine whether the Trump administration has violated his orders and his contempt of court. Of course, Justice Sotomayor outfoxed the Trump administration and the Solicitor General John Sauer. And now John Sauer, figuring out he's been had, has run back to the Supreme Court with a motion for clarification. Oh, the judge is being mean to us. The judge is being openly and unprecedentedly defiant. No, they're not. But you live by the sword, you die by the sword. When you have an appeal that is narrow in scope on an emergency application with limited briefing and no oral argument, where a lot of these issues could be resolved, and you get a one paragraph out of it, that's on you. That's on you. If you wanted a broader decision by the United States Supreme Court, then you should have asked for one on a merits appeal with full briefing and oral argument. That's not what you wanted. So you got what you asked for, and now you'll like it. I like it. I'm Michael Popak. You're on Legal AF. You might have woken up to headlines that said Judge Murphy, or federal judge in Massachusetts, defiantly objects or won't comply with Supreme Court order. That's not the right interpretation. Here's what happened. For the last month or two, Judge Murphy assigned to the case, we call it the DVD case, over the deportation of migrants to third countries that are not their place of origin and not where they've consented to go. And there's limited ability under the statutes, under the immigration law. There's limited abilities for the United States to send somebody to a country they're not from and that they don't want to go to. The issue of whether they do or do not want to go to it, that's perfect for a federal judge exercising due process, making sure due process rights and notice is properly given. That's for them, right? That's their remit. But the Trump administration, in their rush to rush everybody out the door without any notice, whether it's the 200 sent to El Salvador or it's this group that's being sent to South Sudan and Libya, different judges are handling it different ways, but they're all coming to the same conclusion. Due process, notice, and don't allow the Trump administration to send people in the middle of the night and deport them and remove them away from federal court jurisdiction. Because that's what Trump's been arguing. Oh, well, I might have made a mistake, but they're in another country now, and you have no jurisdiction, Judge. Or you can't even rule on this. This is my determination under the Alien Enemies Act, and judges don't have any role. It's not justiciable. Various arguments like that. And so federal judges are having to be, I wouldn't call it defiant, but how about insistent? Their job, not the Supreme Court, not even the appeals court, is to administer the day-to-day justice in this country, wearing a black robe, with lifetime appointment, mind you. And Judge Murphy took it seriously. He said, where are those people now? They said, they're already in South Sudan. Get them back to a U.S. soil Air Force base somewhere in the region. And they brought him back to Djibouti. Apparently, the Trump administration wants to continue the quote-unquote delicate dance of diplomacy to try to get these people in different countries. But that begs the question, whether the federal judge is going to allow that to begin with. So we get a ruling on Friday. We didn't love the ruling on Friday. We talked about the ruling on Friday. There was no real silver lining except for the Sotomayor dissent. And in the order, which is only a paragraph long, why? Why isn't it 50, 60, 90 pages the way other Supreme Court opinions are? Because this isn't an opinion. This is an order granting a stay, administrative stay requested by the Trump administration on an emergency basis. So it's short-circuited, short-tracked, only has 2 briefs, not 3 filed, no oral argument, no deliberation, no nothing. Garbage in, garbage out. Now, the Trump administration doesn't like, they thought it was a win. Yes, the Supreme Court 6-3 supermajority for the MAGA. They've ruled in our favor. We can deport without due process because they blocked Judge Murphy's injunction. Hooray! Except over the weekend, Judge Murphy took a close look at the order, such as it is from the Supreme Court, 1 paragraph, and read the dissent like we all did. And in the dissent, there was an Easter egg laid by Justice Sotomayor. And in it, she said, well, there's a lot of orders coming out of the Massachusetts court, and the remedial orders are not before us at the United States Supreme Court. Now, her dissent was circulated. If the majority didn't agree with her, then they could have written in their paragraph, this divests the lower court of all jurisdiction in this case because we're blocking the injunction. That's not what it says. And trial courts continue to develop the record and make rulings and the rest, unless and until specifically they are ordered to stop doing that or they are blocked by the higher judge. We're in what's called the interlocutory period. Most appeals don't have this problem because the case is over. And that is 95% of the appeals that are not involving Donald Trump. You wait till the end of the case, either by summary judgment, some sort of dismissal, a judgment from the bench, a judgment from a jury verdict, and then you take your appeal. But these are interlocutory. They're happening while the case is going on. And they're happening on an emergency basis, no less, meaning that the courts are not reaching, like the Supreme Court, the substance or the merits of the appeal. It's only facing, well, should we stay? There's an injunction. Should we block that or not? We'll block it until we get the full appeal up and running and marinated and ruminated about it. And we'll take a look at it a year from now. In the meantime, go ahead. We'll turn a blind eye to the depraved, inhumane deportation of human beings to third world countries where they will be tortured, murdered, or worse. And we will violate, potentially, the Convention Against Torture. And we won't allow them to have a Convention Against Torture claim because we're going to let them be deported to these other countries where they're not part of our justice system. And Sotomayor caught something. I didn't even catch it in the first read of Sotomayor, which is there's lots of orders from Judge Murphy, including remedial. What happened? So April the 18th, Judge Murphy enters an injunction against a class of people, in favor of a class of people who are all people being deported out of this area that are going to third countries that they have no nexus with. That's the order, that's the injunction that the Trump administration appeals. They don't wait, they don't add other motions, they don't add other orders. One order, April the 18th, to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, there's another order on May the 21st and May the 22nd. In which the judge says, I think you violated my April 18th order. I think you continued to send people in clear violation of my order to make sure these people were within the jurisdiction of the federal courts and were given proper notice, and you did not comply with it. He even said, I'm going to consider contempt, but not at this moment. Not the first judge ever considered contempt this term against the Trump administration. We're on our third judge. So that is the order. After Judge Murphy got the order from the Supreme Court 6-3 on the stay, the 1 paragraph, and read Justice Sotomayor, he said, no change. There's no change because my May 21st order has not been enjoined by the United States Supreme Court or blocked. And that is what is at issue now. And that is what requires you to make sure these people stay at the Djibouti Air Force Base for the United States and make them accountable and bring them here to a federal judge. Well, Trump administration freaked out. Whoa! Well, this is garbage in, garbage out time. You wanted the short track appeal. You got it. Now they're running for a clarification. I don't think they get the clarification. I mean, whatever happens, I'm going to report on it here on Legal AF. But they're running to the Supreme Court saying there is an openly defiant and unprecedentedly defiant Judge Murphy. You ruled in the DVD case, and he's the judge in the DVD case. And now he's saying that he's not going to abide by your order. He's not saying that at all. He'll abide by that order. But there's another motion, another order that he issued, a remedial order that Sotomayor said was not at issue in the appeal. The only thing they can block are things that are before them on a proper record. That wasn't briefed. That wasn't before them. And so I think the argument is simple. I'm not sure there's 4 votes, let alone 5 votes, to make a clarification. There's no need for a clarification. The one paragraph says what it says. Words speak for themselves. And in nowhere in there, despite the fact that the majority knew about Sotomayor's dissent, because it's circulated before it's published, and sometimes they address it, or sometimes there's a statement about it, they ignored it, meaning they either agreed with it or they didn't see it as a problem. If they wanted to disagree with it, they would have written that. So now they want a clarification. They also want a clarification on the Trump side because they've got other positions that they're taking that are equally upside down. Like to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and to Judge Breyer about the National Guard takeover in California, Donald Trump violating states' rights and taking over California's National Guard. They've argued as of Monday to Judge Breyer in San Francisco that, well, of course the Ninth Circuit blocked your temporary restraining order, so you don't have jurisdiction. To which the other side wrote, you do have jurisdiction about everything other than that temporary restraining order. You can't be inconsistent with it, but you want to make a new ruling, a new temporary restraining order about something else that happens on the record, a new preliminary injunction, the next level up? You want to find the Posse Comitatus Act has been violated? That was not before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. You have not been divested of jurisdiction. Same thing. Murphy is like Breyer of the North, or the East, I guess is the right way to put it. Same thing. He has the power, the inherent authority to administer justice and due process in his courtroom because he wears the black robe. He's not being defiant to the Supreme Court, but he's living within the exact lane, coloring within the lines of the contours of that order, as highlighted by Justice Sotomayor. I love it. I love the fact that you're here watching it as well. You're on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button. I'm going to post this motion for clarification on the Legal AF Substack. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.